On a gray morning in October of 2024, in the small town of Bridgehampton, New York, a store manager reached up and switched off a blue light for the last time. Not a special, not a sale, the last one. And when that blue light went dark, the last full-size Kmart on the American mainland went with it. At its peak, this was one of the biggest retailers the world had ever seen. In 1994, Kmart ran nearly 2,500 stores. There was one in what felt like every town in America: the red sign, the wide aisles, the smell of popcorn near the registers. For a while, it was bigger than a young upstart out of Arkansas called Walmart. Today, almost none of it is left. Cracked parking lots the size of football fields, a faded sign or two, a handful of stores clinging on in Guam and the Virgin Islands. That is the whole empire now. Here is what most people get wrong about how this happened. They will tell you Walmart killed Kmart. That is the easy answer, and it is only half true. Walmart wounded it badly. But what actually finished Kmart off, what made absolutely sure it could never come back, was not a rival at all. It was a single man who looked at a dying store and understood something the shoppers never did: that Kmart was worth more dead than alive. Stay with me, because the trick he used is still being run on American companies today. If you want to see it clearly, hit subscribe and stick with me to the end. And hold on to one idea as we go. The real value was never in the store. It was in the land underneath it. Remember that, because it is the whole story. It began in 1962. A five-and-dime merchant named Sebastian Kresge had spent decades running little variety stores, watching America change around him. The country was booming. Families were pouring into the suburbs, into new houses that needed to be filled. So Kresge bet everything on something bigger: a giant discount store where a working family could buy almost anything under one roof, cheap. The first Kmart opened in January of 1962 in Garden City, Michigan. Big, bright, and low-priced. It was an instant hit. Then, in 1965, came the thing everyone remembers: the Blue Light Special. A store associate would wheel a police-style blue light out onto the floor, flip the switch, and a voice would crackle over the loudspeaker: "Attention Kmart shoppers." For the next few minutes, whatever stood near that spinning blue light was marked down to almost nothing. It was theater. Kids would grab their mother by the sleeve and race across the store to get there first. Grown men still remember the sound of it. That blue light meant one thing, and one thing only: a deal for you. Keep that in mind, because by the end of this story, the blue light comes to mean something very different. For 30 years, it worked. By the early 1990s, Kmart was a colossus, with hundreds of thousands of employees and a store within reach of nearly every American. But at the very top, something was already going wrong. Kmart got caught in the middle. Underneath it, Walmart went lower on price and ran a tighter, smarter supply chain. Above it, Target went higher on style. Kmart stood in between, with aging stores, empty shelves, and a slow checkout line, and it could no longer say who its customer even was. The blue light was still spinning, but fewer and fewer people were running toward it. In January of 2002, the floor gave way. Kmart filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. At the time, it was the largest retail bankruptcy in American history, a company that had held more than $16 billion in assets. On the way down, its own top executives were accused of misleading investors about how bad things really were. Kmart shut roughly 600 stores almost at once. It should have been the end. Instead, it was an opening for someone who had been watching and waiting. That someone was a hedge fund manager named Eddie Lampert. While everyone else saw a broken discount chain, Lampert saw something they missed. Kmart did not just sell cheap goods. It sat on thousands of acres of American real estate, prime land bought decades earlier when it was worth almost nothing. Lampert bought Kmart out of bankruptcy for a fraction of what that land alone was worth. And then, in 2004, he used it to pull off something audacious. He had Kmart turn around and buy Sears, the most storied name in American retail, for $11 billion, and fuse the two into a single company. On paper, it was two wounded giants joining forces to fight back. That is not how it turned out. In the years that followed, the rule looked less and less like keep the shelves full and more like sell the parts. So watch the land. Over the next decade, the stores were slowly starved. There was no money for renovations, the shelves thinned out, and that famous blue light sat rusting in a back room. But the valuable pieces were carved off and sold. The Craftsman tool line, the Kenmore appliance brand, and then the crown jewel, the real estate itself. From 2015 to 2017, more than 200 of the best store locations were spun off into a new property company that Lampert controlled for around $2.7 billion. After that, Kmart and Sears paid rent just to keep standing in the buildings they used to own. All told, Lampert and his hedge fund, ESL, are estimated to have pulled more than $5 billion out of the company through dividends, fees, and deals, while the stores themselves quietly bled to death. Remember the promise from the start. The value was never in the store. It was in the land underneath it. Lampert understood that from the very first day. In 2018, the whole thing collapsed into bankruptcy a second time. By then, there was almost nothing left to save. The brand sold off, the land gone, the shelves picked clean. And in October of 2024, in that store in Bridgehampton, the blue light came on one final time. There was no crowd to run toward it, no voice crackling over the loudspeaker, just a manager reaching up to switch it off in an empty aisle. Think about what that light used to mean. For nearly 60 years, it meant, hurry, grab your kids, there is something good waiting for you. It was a promise that the working family could still get a fair deal in America. At the very end, it lit up an empty room, and then it went dark for good. We like to tell ourselves these giants die because the world moved on, because Walmart was cheaper, because we all learned to click buy from the couch. It is a comfortable story. It lets everyone off the hook. But Kmart did not simply lose. By the time Eddie Lampert took control, the company was already deeply wounded, and years of missteps and that first bankruptcy had seen to that. He did not start the fire, but instead of rebuilding, he chose a strategy that critics say only accelerated the dismantling, selling off the company one valuable asset at a time. To those critics, he was never really in the business of selling to America. He was in the business of selling America itself, the ground beneath the store, one parking lot at a time. The blue light was never the point. The building always was. And if history is any guide, this playbook has not disappeared. Variations of it still show up in struggling companies today. If you remember racing across a Kmart when that blue light came on, if you can still hear a tension, Kmart shoppers in your head, tell me about it in the comments. I read them. And if you want more stories like this one, the ones where the real killer is never who you were told it was, subscribe and stay with me. There are a lot more giants out there, and a lot more empty parking lots, with a story just like this.